the, they were coming constantly. The Russian came at night to bomb. The English came in the afternoon to bomb. The American came 10 o'clock in the morning to bomb. And they were constantly running into the shelters, back and forth, back and forth. Too much work wasn't done. I remember there was some kind of work done and the girls sabotaged something because we were punished and we didn't get food one night. They found that some of the work that they did wasn't correct. And this night, without any alarm, without any warning, the bombs just started falling. And I woke up and like the pressure threw me off the bed, and I just grabbed my blankets, slipped my shoes on, and I started holding on to the door. And as I get to the door, and there was a big foyer, I started screaming, help, help, help. And I don't know till today who was the girl who grabbed me and helped me get out of the barrack and threw me down in the snow. And the rest of the people were all running for their life. I was in the snow with the blanket on my head and watching the skies. The Russians were throwing down, it was called Stalin candles. It was something that was as long as 2 feet. 1 feet was like in a plastic holder, and the other one was like a candle. They used to throw this down, and this lit up at a certain height. Sorry. And they used to lit up the downstairs, so this way they see what they bomb. The sky looked just gorgeous with all these candles lighting up. And I lay there under the blanket and I said to myself, this looks just like an opera. Like an opera, the last one that I saw. And I said, this is gorgeous, but the bombs are falling and making the holes all around me. And all of a sudden, everything got quiet, the planes ran away, and the Germans started looking for casualties because it was such a surprise attack that they were really surprised that they couldn't find anybody there. But they found me buried in the snow. I couldn't walk, and this German guard picked me up and took me to the shelter and said to his friend, he said, you know, these Jews have a God. If she survived, there was almost 8 bomb holes around me, and I was in the middle. He said, if she survived, he says, this is just a miracle. And that was, he gave me a piece of sugar. My throat was so dry from all the lights there, from the fire. And I said to myself then, if I survived a couple of weeks what I did, and now this, I'm going to live for a long time. And from now on, I really will make sure that everything works out and that I get healthy. And I did. I took care of myself. I never had to work for the Germans. I never did a stitch of work for them. Like I always tell my children, and that's why they lost the war, because I didn't help them. And
they treated you much better than the Germans in Auschwitz, obviously.
Yes, yes. Because we were supposed to be under Red Cross protectorate, so we were supposed to be treated as workers. Yeah, the third job was, I just remember, they went out to the Siemens. We worked for the Siemens company. In fact, they had even given some money after the war to these people who were in camp. And the Siemens company was a big dye company. They made paints. And in fact, they're still existing today in Germany. And I think they're still in Nuremberg. Anyway, after this, we had no more barracks left. We lived in shelters. It was really sort of a life of chaos. You came out in the morning and you took snow and you washed your face. Then you took another hand of snow and you ate it for water. And by that time, if anything, the kitchen barrack was still not burned down, and they cooked potatoes. But the potatoes, they didn't have a chance the potato to cook through, so they gave it out half-cooked, and that was our meals. The potato and the snow, and back in the bunker again, because now the American came in the morning, and then the English came at tea time, we used to call it, 5 o'clock. and the Russian at night, of course. We were there for 14 days, still in the camp. But what we found out later was that they weren't trying to bomb us. Across the street from us was a cemetery. And supposedly the Germans had ammunition buried in the cemetery, and they were trying to bomb the cemetery, the ammunition. And of course a couple of bombs fell into our camp because they were like across the street only. After 14 days, they lined us up, and we marched through the city of Nuremberg, I don't know where, to a place where there used to be a chocolate factory. In fact, you could still smell the chocolate. It was smoldering there after it was all bombed. And there was a very big basement there, and they put us in that basement. There were no lights. You walked on top of each other. Everything was done in that basement. It was so awful, so disgusting, that after a couple of days we decided to come upstairs, and there were still walls left, and make ourselves some kind of a place to stay, because if they're going to bomb, we're going to die in the basement anyway, on top of each other. And if not, we're going to die at least on fresh air. And we stayed up there for about 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, there was nothing what to do with us anymore. So whoever was in charge decided to divide the group of 500 into 3 and to send us out to different places. I don't know why, but they decided to do it alphabetically. My name was Ashkenazi with an A, and all my friends from hometown and everybody was with a W and an S and a T. And I was falling apart from everybody else, and it was terrible. I was crying. How could I just go away with nobody now? Till one of the girls, I don't know who, was very smart, and he said, well, why don't you just put a W in front of the A? Whatever you want to pronounce it, just do it. And that's what we did. And we had to put our names down, put the W in front of it, and I went with the girls. We were about 200, and they took us to the railroad station. They put us in cattle cars again, and up we went. Here it was getting already spring. The snow was starting to melt, and we were going up north somewheres, and it was getting colder, and we were running out of food. And after 3 or 4 days of traveling again, we arrived into a station, into a town called Meltower. It was up in Thuringia. It was cold again and snow again, and they took us to the end of the town. There was a factory with a big chimney, and on the chimney there was lace. This was once a lace factory. And now they converted the basement into a munition factory. Of course, the Germans did this all the time. And we found there 200 Polish girls who were working there already. Now, Polish and Hungarian never got along, even then. What happened was, the Polish always felt that we had 3 extra years of good life in Europe, and they were already in camp these 3 years. So they naturally had a very legitimate thing to feel bad about us. We went there, and also girls were selected for work and jobs, and I felt much better, and I was working in the laundry. They were washing laundry, and I was sorting the laundry and putting it away. And we were there for about 3 months. But as soon as we started coming, a week or so later, the American followed us. And they started also coming, visiting every day. It was really funny because we were on the Polish girl lived there were like 3 flights, and we lived on the top. The top was like studios with a lot of windows all around, and not a lot of sunshine, a lot of light. And the girls, some worked in the kitchen, some worked other places down in the ammunition department. I know how to knit, and I know how to knit 5-finger gloves that I learned. And they bought back the gloves from the Nazis, from the soldiers from the front, you know, all torn up, and they gave it to me, and I used to fix them up. I used to make new fingers. And for that I got extra food. And of course that's all you were bargaining, is to have enough to eat. I had extra food, and I remember I had that much food that I hated washing clothes, and I even gave my dress to be washed and paid with the food for it. That's how much I hated it. And I used to sit on the window in the sun with my bag and used to knit the whole day, and this was my job. Till April. At the beginning of April, you could hear and you heard that the war was getting to an end. The Germans were losing, the Americans were taken over. And this was on a Friday night, the 14th of April. As we go laying in bed on the bunks, and we hear this terrible boom, boom, heavy-duty artillery going through. And we didn't think nothing of it. 7 o'clock in the morning we got up, and we used to do Seelapel in the upstairs on the 3rd floor. And we were all lined up, and we're waiting, and nobody's showing up. Finally, the person who was in charge, the Lagerheim tester, there was a wrought iron door-like building. And she goes to this door, and she touches it. And the door is open. They start walking down the stairs. I mean, this Lagerheim tester who was in charge of us, these were Jewish girls from Slovakia, that they used to be in very good contact with the Germans already. And they go down, they go to the Germans' quarters. There's nobody there. They go down to the basement, nobody there. They go in the kitchen, nobody there, but no food either. They all left. The only one that was left was this old guard from Nuremberg who came along with us. And he said, I'm very old, I can't run anymore. He said, I don't care what will happen, it can be worse. I think I treated you girls nice, and that you will say a good word about me. He sure did. He fixed our shoes, and he did a few things for us. And he said that everybody ran away. He knew that they got orders to put us against the wall and shut us all. But they decided to just run away and leave us. Now it was Sunday morning. There was no American, no Russian, no English, nobody showed up, but we're all alone. All camps were liberated, a lot of man camps in the region, and Polish and French, and they, everybody was walking and going and looking for things, and they started to come to our camp. They heard that there's a girls' camp here.
Right.
Well, this guard saved our life. He stayed by the door. He wouldn't let any man walk into our camp. Monday, we were already starved, 3 days without food. So we decided to walk into town. We walked into town, and they found a bakery, and these girls who were stronger went into the bakery, and they were grabbing hot bread out of the ovens, and they were breaking them up and throwing it in the crowd. I was so weak by now and so hungry. My shoes were falling off my feet. I was such a pathetic thing. And I decided to get off from the big piazza, the plaza where everybody was, and just walk into a side street. As I walked into the side street, there was a beautiful white picket fence and a little house, and a young couple was standing there with a baby. And I stopped there, and I said in Germany, I said, could you give me something to eat? And she said, sure, come on in. They took me in, and they gave me food. I never forget. It was potato salad and some other cooked stuff, and I ate nicely. And she looks at me, and she says, you look so awful, so bad. And she said, she goes out, and she comes back with a pair of sandals. She says, take that off. He says, put these on. And she gave me a pair of sandals, and I ate. And she was telling me that a lot of the people had ran away because they were afraid the American will come and they're going to get hurt. But they decided to stay. And I said, I'm sure the American wouldn't hurt you. If you were courageous enough to stay, you have nothing to be hurt for. And I walked away. I said, thank you and goodbye. And I walked away, and I go into the plaza. And as I come into the plaza, the first American jeep, the soldiers, everybody was wearing sunglasses. It was so funny. I said, does everybody in America wear glasses? Well, of course, we didn't speak any English. And as the tanks were coming in with American soldiers and jeeps, and there was a captain who originally came from Romania, and he spoke Romanish, and he was able to converse with us, and he told us, anybody comes, you just tell them you're prisoners of war. And that was the first English word that we learned. He said that they are making, in the other side of the town, they are making headquarters, and then they will come in and see what they could do for us and take care. Meanwhile, they had thrown cans of tuna fish and chocolates, and of course, cigarette, the big thing that everybody was, I mean, not that we needed, but the Americans. And all kind of foods, crackers and cookies and stuff that they had on their jeep with them. And the next day, this captain really came to the camp. And he couldn't imagine, he couldn't believe how terrible everybody looked, how filthy we were, how torn down clothes we wore. It was just really terrible. And they went, these American soldiers went to warehouses where they have youth uniform storage, the Germans. They broke the doors down, and they came back with uniforms, with light blue blouses, with trousers, with socks, with pullovers, and everybody had to line up. Everybody got an outfit, and then we threw all this, we went inside, took showers, washed, and we threw all this dirty clothing that we so-called had in a bonfire and burned it all up. And here we were all dressed up now. Americans were trying to feed us, and we were there from April 16th till May the 1st. On May Day, a couple of Red Cross trucks, American, came. They loaded us on, and they took us to a resort place in Ranchmüller. There was a hotel there. The German women were cooking for us and cleaning, and we were just told to rest and recuperate and get our strength back. Meanwhile, the American soldiers, we found a couple of Jewish soldiers, and I found this American chaplain. He was an assistant chaplain who spoke Hungarian. His mother was Hungarian.
What was his name?
His name was Victor Geller. And he came there, and he made the first daven. He made a minyan, and everybody, you know, they came, the men, to say Kaddish, and it was crying, and the first time after, you know, we missed a lot. We never said Shiva, we never said Kriya, all these things that normal people have after somebody passes away, we didn't have. And that davening that he put together then was really one of those bigger memories that I don't know, it was just something to bring us back to the world that we were in. He was there for a little while with us. Meanwhile, they brought us in sewing machines. We used to call it organizing. We used to take a couple American soldiers with their guns, and we used to go to warehouses, break down the locks, and help ourselves to things that we missed. One day they arrived, then this soldier brought another Jewish soldier with him, and this way we had a couple coming every day to bring us food. And one day they came with a jeep full with materials from warehouses, and we had the machines. Yeah, they bought parachute silk, that fine white parachute silk, and we made scarves for every soldier in that division, a present. After a couple of weeks, he tells me that he was only there for about 10 days, or maybe 12. The war in Japan, they called some of the boys home to send them to Japan. And he left, but he brought other Jewish guys there who were trying to help us. We found one person from Cleveland, Ohio, who had two sisters who came into camp, and he was looking for them. Then later I had found out that he found one of his sisters. The other one was killed. And we were making ourselves clothes. We were back to being teenagers and young ladies, and wanted to have nice things, and we were sewing. Funny, people knew how to sew, but they didn't know how to cut. But I had learned very well, and I knew how to cut. And we had in the dining room, big tables, and we cut dresses. And that place, there was steps going down, and that was a railroad track, and next to that was a river flowing. We used to go every day there bathing, but we had no bathing suits. So I invented a bathing suit, a bikini. And the Germans used to have quill covers made out of blue and white checks. So we took those, we cut them up, and we made bikinis. We were almost like uniform bikinis. Everybody had to go swimming. And it was we had a lot of fun there. I mean, we started getting back to normal. And now we were feeling better, and everybody wanted sort of like, no, who else survived from the family? He had made this, Victor Geller made a list of everybody and who they're looking for and where. Like I looked in Israel, and I looked for my brother, for other family, but I unfortunately didn't find anybody. These lists that he made were sent out to Israel, America, and to other DP camps.
This was considered a DP camp, this hotel arrangement?
No, this hotel was like a DP camp, yes. After we were there till August. And everybody got their strength back. Some of the girls had to go to the hospital, but everybody was fine now. And everybody wanted, to start going, see what's going on. America, Russia, and England divided Germany in three at the end of August. And this territory became Russian, where we were. Now, one morning, American soldiers came with Red Cross trucks and transferred everybody, the whole camp, to Frankfurt am Main. That was the night that we were all ready, packed to go, and that was the night that I had a dream. My dream was that my brother survived. And my brother is a year younger than I am, and as a child he was always sick. He had some kidney problems, and I just, my mother used to cook for him without salt, and I remember always, I felt that he was only one boy in the family, and he was always more pampered, and I just couldn't imagine him surviving something like that, a year of this. And that night I had the dream that he's alive. I got up in the morning and I said, I'm not going to Frankfurt am Main. I'm going back to Romania. I don't think I could ever live knowing that maybe somebody's there and I missed out. And I found another couple of girls. These girls there were three sisters who had adopted me in camp. They said, well, let's go back. My brother's a young man. Maybe he's there. And we were 7. Now, this American soldier, bought in the afternoon, he came prepared with a jeep, and 2 of them, the 2 jeeps, and they bought us food and boxes of cigarettes and chocolate and coffee. And they said, you can take money, but this is better than money. You take this along, and this will help you get through. And they took us to a city in Auerbach, a couple of kilometers from the resort place where we were, for Ranchmüller, and they broke the lock on the hotel that was locked up, of course, and they put us in on the 2nd floor, and 3 rooms. And he said, you stay here and wait till the Russians come in, and then Romania is Russia now, you could just go freely. And that's what we did. We didn't have to wait too long, because next morning, very early morning, we just hear this boom, boom, boom. We run to the windows, and there comes the Russian army, the Kazakhs on top of horses. So terrifying after all these beautiful American boys with the pressed shirts and neckties. Here are these animals. Well, we were just really very scared. And I was especially scared because I thought it was my idea. I thought that the girls would really murder me there. That afternoon, a Red Cross truck passed by and stopped in front of the hotel. And we were screaming from the window. They thought that we were Christians who had run away from the Russians. And they said, oh, who are you? And we're going down to the truck. And there I find a cousin, a second cousin or so. Where are you people going? We're going to Prague. This was a man who had 2 daughters, who they took him to camp. And he made up his mind that he got, I don't know where he got the truck from, and put a Red Cross on it, and that he was going to go from camp to camp looking for his children. And I think he also found one. And he said, take us along, take us to Prague, we want to go. And he says, the bus is full, but I'm coming back on Thursday, and we're going to keep 7 empty seats for you, and you could come. And I said, fine, we don't want it for nothing, we pay you for it. And Thursday he came back, and we packed up on Thursday, and he came with the Red Cross, and we really didn't believe that he's going to be there. He packed us up, and
he went to Prague.
We started the way to Prague.
Okay.
So we went to Prague. We arrived there, and there was I don't know if it had anything to do with the joint, but there was a committee there that was in charge of people who came back from the camps. It was very primitive. And people were sleeping on the floor on straws, and it was really very upsetting, because after all what we went through, now we're coming back, and that's what we get. And I remember I started complaining, and I said, you know, I mean, we're human. We were only away for 1 year. What are you afraid of? So then somebody told me, we're afraid that, and we heard that you had lice and that you're not clean, and, you know, and stuff like that. I said, well, do we look like we're not clean? By that time, I had a suitcase full of clothes, a suit, and we wore shorts. And anyway, we stayed there for about 10 days. And we had a really good time. We went to see Prague, we went to see all the museums and whatever was left. We really made the best we could. After that, we got on trains to go to Budapest. That's the only way to go back. And the trains were always very crowded with a lot of Russian soldiers. And very primitive, the Russians.
Was it safe for 7 girls to travel with the Russians?
With the Russians, it was very hard, but what we did, we got boys. We got Jewish boys who fought for camp, and we attached each other to each other, and we made a group together, and that every boy had a girl. So when the Russians came, we learned they used to call Jevuchka. Jevuchka is a girl, and they always wanted Jevuchka. And the guys used to say, no, she's mine, and this is how they protected her. I don't know who these boys were. But I know once we got to Budapest, we never saw them again. And we traveled with the trains, we traveled to Budapest, and over there was a really big community already with offices and all kind of joint and UNRWA and all the people, you know, who were involved in these things. And there were lists on walls of camps Auschwitz survivors. And I found my brother on this list.
In which camp?
My brother was already home.
Uh-huh.
He was in Theresienstadt, and he was liberated in February. And he went back home. And of course, I couldn't believe it, that he really is alive. And we stayed also in Budapest about 2 weeks or so. And also from this communal place that they threw you down when you arrived, I got ourselves also into people's houses. And I never forget, I had a long bathrobe that I made myself from like silk. It was beautiful, with beautiful flowers. And then after I took a shower and I came out that night, the people who had out in the room, because they took a room and they gave us, for my friend and myself, they couldn't believe us. They said, "Where'd you get all that stuff from?" From Americans, of course. And after 2 weeks, we tried to get back to Romania, and we couldn't. We were already 30 accumulated in this camp, and I told everybody, I said, "Listen, I have cigarettes, and I have coffee, and I have chocolate. Let's go to the railroad station." We went to the railroad station, and we told them that we are willing to pay. They should attach to a train a whole wagon, a train, a regular, normal wagon, and to take us down to Romania. And I told them to get cigarettes and stuff, and I gave them, I remember, 200, package of what, I don't know what, and they gave us a date, and we should come out to the station, and we're going to have it. And we did. And the only thing is that there is 2 ways to go into Romania. One is down to Timișoara, and one is up to Satmar, or Rada Mare. And we went to Timișoara, but didn't care as long as we passed the border. Meanwhile, my brother heard that I was alive. He came up to Satmar to the border to meet me. By the time I got home, my brother wasn't there. So first I didn't even believe that he survived. I went back to our own house. The windows were all broken. Everything was emptied out, the lumber shop, all the stuff was taken away. And it was like, they sing bells, the Häuserles bewachsen mit Grus, that's how everything was. Grass was just overflowing and everything. And I said, I can't live here. Because we lived there used to be a Jewish quarters, but we didn't live in the Jewish quarters. We lived on the other side of town. And I went to the Jewish quarters, and there they had a commune kitchen, and there was an uncle, my mother's uncle, and had also a big house, and a lot of us moved in there. So I had 2 cousins there, and we moved in there, and we all lived in the same house. We lived ate in the commune kitchen, and we stayed there. My brother opened up a business. Some of the people who took away our merchandise gave it back to him. So he opened a lumber shop, and he opened another business, and he was making money. He was very happy being there. Meanwhile, my parents had hidden away money and gold and other stuff, and my brother knew where it was, and he dug that up. And as soon as he got the money out, I managed just days after they changed the currency. So he was able to change the money, and he had money. So when I arrived, so finally he came home, and I was there, and I remember when he hugged me, his first word was "Where is Suri?" Because he was very close with my sister. He and I didn't get along, and we still don't get along. I mean, we see each other almost every week, but we always argue about something. And my husband only last week said to me, "Why do people get together? You're always arguing." I said, "That's true, but we still get together." And by me, that's it. That was yesterday. Today is a different world already. I forgot what happened yesterday. And I felt very bad. By the time, I told them what things were going on and what happened, and we stayed there. But I wasn't really happy staying there. Meanwhile, I got a telegram from New York. This chaplain's mother sent me a telegram that she had sent papers for us to come out to America and the papers are in Munich. And I said to my brother, let's go back to Germany. And he said, no, we had a good business here. I'm not going to leave it. And I think I stayed about 6 months there. And meanwhile, I went to visit these friends who had adopted me. And I had a good time there. And I met a lot of my old friends with whom we grew up together in Red Tag. And it was like fun. I remember going to restaurants, having duck for lunch. And it was nice.
What was the reaction of the people who stayed there during the war? Not the Jews.
Not the
when
Jews.
you returned.
Oh, everybody sort of like, they felt sorry, but they were very eager to take our stuff when we left anyway. The only thing that I got was a couple of pictures that I don't know why they took it, but that's it. But I don't know, no, I don't know if they were really happy that we came back. So after 6 months, then I got another telegram from this lady, and I said to my brother, let's go. He said, no, he doesn't want to go. One Friday afternoon, 2 Russian soldiers come to the door. They knock on the door, they have a paper in the hand, and they said they're looking for Leo Ashkenazi. I said, what do you want him for? He said, well, he was just 19, he has to join the army. I always said that I didn't say those words, God said them. I said, well, he's not here, he went to America. And they just marked it, went to America, and they left. I picked myself up, I ran to the store, and I said to my brother, listen, if they catch you now, you never get out of here. This is the time to leave. And my brother did get scared, and I don't know what he did, but he sold whatever he could sell. It was tangible, and he made $500 American. And we came back that Friday. We packed up and how do you call it? Knapsack and a suitcase and whatever we could carry. And Shabbos night, Saturday night, without saying any goodbye, just to the cousins that we shared that place, and we walked out on foot, because you had to go like over the bridge to get to the highway, and we went there and we hid there till the morning that the bus came, and we took the bus and we left. We went to Red Tag, and my uncle was very sick. He had married one of the girls from town, but he was very sick, and he was already in the hospital in days. We said, I really didn't say goodbye to anybody there. But this friend of mine, with whom I was so good as friends as children, met me on the bus, and he says, where are you going? And I said, to America. And he said, oh, sure, America. That was the last time I saw him then. And we went to Days, we went to the hospital, and my uncle was unconscious already. He was in a coma, and he was really dying. And from there we went to Cluj. In Cluj, I knew this lawyer who was in the slave labor by us. And I just started to investigate what he is, what. Meanwhile, we checked into a hotel. The hotel was called the New York Hotel. That's the New Yorker Hotel. And we had a little room with 2 beds. And one day, and we were going around. We had no papers. I mean, the papers were taken away. And we were going around trying to see what we could do. And I come back to the hotel. We tried to go to the room. The room is locked. I go to the office. I said, what happened? Why is my door opening? And he said, there was somebody here, and he took your luggage. I said, who? What? And he says, here is the address. Go. We go over, and there we met this lawyer. And he said, what your parents did for us, 200 boys, at least that much I could do, that you shouldn't stay in a room in a hotel, that you stay with me. He had a daughter, like, I don't even know how she survived, but she was a young teenager. And we stayed there. He gave us a very nice time. He took us to operas and to restaurants, and we really had a nice 2 weeks. But after that, we said, listen, this is not what we came for. We want to go further. And then we took the train and we went down to the border. Border was a city, escapes my mind now, that my uncle, I had an uncle who married my mother's sister. In fact, I have a picture of their wedding. And we went to this uncle. He had remarried to a younger woman, very nice lady. In fact, my uncle is dead, but she's alive, and we still keep in touch. We stayed there a couple of days, and then you had to get yourself over the border from Romania back into Hungary. And that wasn't legal. But the Russian soldiers, for money, took you across. So it was $10 a head, and we had to give the money in advance. And Thursday night we were supposed to go. Somebody comes towards evening, and they said, listen, we're not going anywhere. The Russians had money, they got drunk, and they're not capable for doing anything. $10. Friday, we're sitting by the table Friday night. Somebody knocks on the door, and one of the people who worked with our group comes and says, the Russians are all right already, they're feeling better. And they said, tonight, anybody who wants to go tonight, you're going. Otherwise, you don't go. That's what happened. My uncle said, kids, you go. Well, we went out of the house, we said goodbye, we went out, and this happened to be an uncle who loved me very much as a child. I was a very spoiled brat. I was a second girl in the family, and demanded a lot of love, and I got it from everybody, starting with my father. And he says, go. And we went, like when you see these movies where people hide on hands and knees going, that's how we were crawling on the floor, that they shouldn't see us going. And we got to this open truck. They put us in the truck, and the Russians covered us with a blanket, whatever, and they said, this is it, we'll go now. When they got to the border, the guard said, what you got there? He said, they all came across, now I'm throwing them back. He says, I'm just throwing them, put them out on the road and let them go. They don't belong here. And that's it. And we just went through the border. He did take us on a wild open spaces there. No, nothing, just mannish grass. And they unloaded us there, and they wished us good luck. We had a couple with us who was pregnant, almost the 9th month. I remember we were so afraid that that baby shouldn't come on the way. We waited there till it was so cold, and we just hugged each other to warm up. And in the morning, a couple of the boys walked into the city there, whatever, I don't know which city it was, and they rented a van. And they came out and they picked us up and they took us to Debrecen. In Debrecen, when we got there, we had to give a secret word to let us in the hotel there. So we had a secret word, don't remember it, but we went in there, and we were, my brother, and we were like 7 or something. I was the only girl from this group. We used to sleep in one room, and they used to put a sheet across my bed to make a petition. And we were in Debrecen. The next morning, we took another van, and we went down to, it's about 5 or 6 hours, went down to Budapest. In Budapest, I had the address. One of the ladies who was in camp with us, she was picked up from her family stayed in Budapest, and she was on a bus, and they picked her up and they sent her to Auschwitz. She survived, and she came back, she found her family, and I had her address. And we came up to her. I never forget, they were just eating lunch, cholent. And we went there, and there was no place to go. So I went into a Mizrahi kibbutz that they were accumulating girls, and the boys went somewhere else. I don't know where they were. And we still didn't have papers. And this Mizrahi kibbutz, I used to get up every morning, And there used to be a tremendous inflation in Hungary then. Every morning you had to go to the bank with a couple of dollars to get money, and you got like hundreds of thousands of pengers, paper, and every night it was full of the street because it was worthless already. And every morning we just changed as many money as we needed for a couple of car fares or for something to eat or something. I had my money hidden. I was wearing a garter belt, and in the garter belt, in the elastic, I had $200 sewed in. It was summer. I just wore that garter belt because my money was there. I took it off at night and put it under the pillow. And in the morning, I still take it out. And that morning, I forgot to take it out. And I left it there. And as I go on the train to meet my brother and the other boys, I remembered that I left my garter belt there. And I just jumped off the bus, went on another trolley car, and then back to the place and found it under the pillow and put it on, and fine. I was short of money now. I already, so what we used to do is jump on the trolley car until the conductor used to come from one end to the other. You stayed in the back of the trolley car, and then you jumped off. And then you waited, and you take another trolley car like that. And this is how we used to jump on and off. And I met my brothers, and me, wise guy, I have to cross the street on a red light. You're not allowed to jaywalk in Europe. You get fined. And here the cop gets me. The boys are on the other side waiting, and I am here arguing, bargaining with the cop. With the policeman. He should let me go.
Right.
And he says, well, give me your address where you are. I send you the ticket there. You're going to pay. Well, I have no address. I have no papers. And finally, I start digging, and I found one more car fare. I said, how much is the ticket? He says, well, the same thing as the car fare on the train, on the trolley car. So I take out my money, and I give him, and he gives me a receipt, and the boys are waiting there, and they're afraid to come because they don't have papers either, and what's going to happen now? So finally said goodbye, and I come back to the boys there. I meet him. He said, what happened? I tell him. He says, that was a lesson. No more crossing red lights. We stayed there a couple of weeks. And then we're ready to leave again. Now we got to go into Germany. How do you go to Germany? There were buses from this committee, from this group, from the UNRWA or Joint, I don't remember, that they were bringing back people into Germany to DP camps. So first we went to register, and of course the first bus left on a Shabbos again. And we said, no, this is not an emergency, we're not really going. And then Monday there is another bus, and we went Monday. And we went to Strasbourg. We also stayed a couple of days. And then, I don't know, we were in Vienna a couple of days, and then we went back. They took us to Ulm. Ulm was a new DP camp, and the only people who were there was the bus that came Shabbos. So they were already working in offices and doing things there. And this is where we came. We stayed in Ulm. My brother became a guard, a policeman, and this way we had the chance. We got a room for ourselves. Otherwise, you had to share a room with 32 people. You had to get dressed under the covers. There were men and husbands and wives and children crying and teenagers. But being my brother was a guard and he worked nights, so they gave him a private room across the street in the barracks. So this was a 3-room apartment with one kitchen, so we shared that 3 families. One of them was this couple who came with us across, and he had a baby. She had a baby girl. And then there was another couple also married, and my brother and I. So we stayed in Ulm. We never went for our papers to Munich because we came to register to go to Israel, my father's last words. We were registered to go to Israel, and Cyprus situation came in. The British wouldn't allow the ships to come. And it got to a point that after staying there, then we moved into Frankfurt am Main. I had some friends there. So we stayed in Frankfurt am Main, and after being there for almost 2.5 years and waiting to go to Israel, I told my brother, you know what? I don't think I want to wait any longer. Let's try something else. And then we registered to come to America. And meanwhile, My father always told me he had a cousin in America, but I never knew what her name was. And that was very interesting because a friend of mine, a cousin, a second cousin, who was in Frankfurt with me, she came to America a year before. She lived in Borough Park, and she used to go to the young Israel to daven. And there she met a young girl, an American-born girl, and one Shabbos afternoon she said, "Come to my house." She went to the house, and my aunt I called her aunt because she had girls almost my age. And this cousin of my father said, "Where you come from?" Started asking questions. And she tells her, she said, "Oh, I had a cousin there." "What was the name?" He said, "Ashkenazi." So she said, "Well, there's two children Ashkenazi in Germany." And she wrote me a letter and she told me who she was. And then I started putting two together. She was, her father and my grandmother were brothers and sisters. They were Panet. And she was very nice, and she started sending me every month $2 in an envelope. And when I changed this $2 was 120 mark, $1. I had $240, so I was a rich person in Germany with that kind of money. In fact, I had a very small tooth that never came down, like the David braces, they put it down, and I hated it. And I had 3 brothers who were dental technicians, and one of them says, "We won't charge you for the work, we just charge you for the material. Let me put you in a cap." I said, "No, American Works has better dentists." He says, "But you're not going to have money to pay for it." And you know what? He put me in for $1, the material cost, a cap, and I said, as soon as I come to America, I will change it. It lasted 24 years from the dental technician. That was the kind of work. Anyway, we came to America on March 20, 1945. My father's cousin, we were riding to each other, and she said that she's coming to the hotel to meet us there. And we arrived on, we were 9 days on the sea, on the ocean, and we arrived here, and I remember everybody came, people came to pick up their relatives at the docks. First of all, we arrived at night, and they wouldn't dock at night, so they stopped the boat in the middle of the, I don't know, East River or wherever it was, and we all went up on the roof to see all these lights of America. And I remember I was crying, and somebody said, "Why are you crying for?" I said, "You know what? Till now we had one track mind, how to get out of Germany. And now that I'm here, I don't know what's waiting for me over there behind those lights." In the morning then, we docked in the harbor, and everybody came to pick up, and everybody was crying, and I cried with everybody else. By the time I got to the hotel, and my aunt was there, I never saw her, I never saw a picture. She saw a picture that I had sent, but I said, "This is Helenka," and I had no more tears anymore. By that time, I was all dried up. I cried so much in the harbor that I didn't cry anymore. And we stayed in the hotel, and we stayed there a couple of days, and she took us into Brooklyn, to Borough Park, and and this cousin with whom I was in Germany came to meet us, and she wrote down all the stations from 103rd Street that come to Brooklyn, and where I have to change on Times Square and follow the green light. And the next day, my brother and I decided to go back to the hotel. And we went to the train, we took the B train, and I watched every station on the paper. And when I was in Times Square, I wanted to make sure that I take the right train. So I spoke about over 100 English words that I learned in Germany. There was an English professor there, and I used to go once a week to take English lessons. And I go over to this tall guy, and I'm short here, and I look up at him, and I said, "Could you tell me if this is the right train to 103rd Street? And he looks down at me, and he said, "Yep, this is the right train to 103rd Street."
Correct.
And that was my first English lesson.
That's it.
That I got.
So how did you meet your husband then?
Well, we stayed in the hotel, And I just have to tell you something, that the joint didn't want to keep us in New York. And they said that they're paying for us to go to Cleveland, they're paying for me to go to school, they're paying for boarding, for everything, just to leave New York. And I started crying. I said, after all this that I went through, and I finally found somebody, a little family, and now we're going to leave them and go to Cleveland that I don't know anybody? And they said, well, if you don't go, then you're out of the hotel, and we don't help you anymore. And we took that choice. We decided not to go to Cleveland and to come stay with my
Relative.
aunt, the relative. She said, you come and stay with us. In fact, she didn't even have a bed for me. I shared the bed with her daughter. And my brother slept on a porch till they finally bought a bed for me, that I had one.
Okay.
Go to Cleveland, we came and we lived with this cousin of my father that I called aunt, and she had a brother who was also a cousin to my father, who was married, and they came to see the Greener refugees, of course. Now, the wife of this other cousin was my husband's sister, and my husband was a single guy, just got out of the army, and he used to hang around a lot by his sister. This is the sister.
The American Army.
In the American Army, yeah. And he used to hang around with the sister. They came together, and they were very close. And they came to see the Greener refugees, of course. And that's when I met my husband. That was a day before Purim. And I happened to be a little chubby by that time. And when my sister-in-law said to her brother, why don't you take the Greener cousin out and show her the city? And my husband said, I wouldn't be found dead with a fat girl. So that's all. I didn't know about this.